Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
Greg Proops.
This is Dan.
This is
Stone.
Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is David
This
Lapp.
is Stuart Copeland. This is Mick
I'm
Gillette.
Krista Vernoff.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
I'm Laird Hamilton.
This is Rob
Hey,
Bell.
this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is Cole Cuchna with the Dissect podcast, and you're listening to The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Cole Cuchna is the creator of the Dissect podcast. Just like he said, he's also, by training, a composer. He was the keyboard player for the New Humans.
Yep.
He is a husband, father, and we are in Sacramento, his hometown,
Yeah.
to talk to him about what's coming next. Cole, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate you guys taking the drive.
Sure.
You know, I used to work in Sacramento. I used to work at Tower Records on Florin Road back in the olden times. Bulletproof plastic kind of swinging in front of it was kind of a rough neighborhood back
Right
in the
across
days.
from Florin Mall.
Yeah, is
Right.
Florin Mall still terrible to go to?
I don't even think it's a mall anymore.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It's a community outreach center, and a,
Yeah.
you know, it's what malls become after they're no longer malls. And I don't know, I'm just making that up.
Yeah. They had an Otis Spunkmeyer when it was a burrito shop. That's
When
how,
Otis Spunkmeyer made burritos.
yeah, that's how far back.
No kidding.
Yeah, way back.
I want to also mention that since we're in Sacramento, you know who's missing is our frequent guest engineer, my cousin Daryl,
Yeah.
who lives here in Sacramento and is usually with us when we come up here.
Oh, nice.
We probably should also mention
And shout out our biggest power listener in Sacramento who we love, Dave Agent.
sure, Dave Agent.
Yeah.
And also a nod to Jason McEnroth, fellow Tower alum, and he's left us, but always in our hearts, and he's a Sacramento guy as
Yeah, former Sacramento freelancer, by the way.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, rest in peace, Jason. What's up, Dave? What's going on, Daryl? But we're here to talk to and about Cole Cuchna. We love the Dissect podcast. I know
Man,
you
do
hear
we
that
ever
every
love
week.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I can't shut up about it. Once I get the chance to talk about you, I'm just like, oh, no, you've got to listen to this show. And
Here's why.
Yeah.
Because Pete and I are old-ass men.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, now I grew up in Vallejo,
Yeah.
and I grew up in a generation of hip-hop artists in Vallejo. So we understand hip-hop from a creation standpoint. And when most people our age, though, because we have a few years on you, get to talking about – so we have a new segment on our show that we've been doing for about a month and a half now called the Album Fight. And we put two albums next to each other and then score them like a boxing match. So track one against track one.
Oh, got it.
10-point must. And a lot of times people will say, well, there's no way that you can put a hip-hop album up next to an album that's made by a band. And the first thing I do is I say, you need to shut your fucking mouth. And the second thing I do is say, go get an education and listen to the Dissect podcast.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen is you're going to hear from a trained composer about how and why the assembly of samples has become one of the most important art forms in music.
Yeah.
And why it takes a patient ear and why it takes an encyclopedic knowledge of music and human reactions to music to assemble those pieces like that. And people will often say, like, well, you just need to rob a sample and stick it on top of a beat and you have a song. And that was, at one time, somewhat true.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah. Maybe.
You know, in the most base explanation.
For me, that's like saying, to write a book, all you have to put is some words together.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
I think the implication, though, is you just rip a page of Faulkner.
Yeah.
And then you plagiarize that, and you add a few words here and there, and you have yourself a chapter.
Yeah.
But that's not true. It's just not true. And we had very recently, with our friend Phil, we had this conversation, and he said, you know, there's no way that I could ever score an album fight with a hip-hop act the same way that I could with a band. And I would say, Phil, you're wrong. And we're going to do it. We're going to force him into that corner.
Yeah,
Nice.
we're gonna,
Yeah.
That's one of the things we get to do with our album fights. Is I was having a conversation with Richard, who does our pre-fight breakdown, kind of like Max.
He's our Max Kellerman, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, I hate Bad as an album. It's just overproduced and terrible." And I'm like, "That's a great album." You know, and you can say that it's not, but there's 35 million or so people that have spent $15 on it that disagree with you, you know? So the next fight is Bad versus AC/DC Back in Black. And that was a motherfucker of a fight. It was so hard. By the way, I want to mention this too. You analyzed Kendrick Lamar's album, and when we talked to Stuart Copeland, we said to him, like, obviously you're not making the popular music that people crave and push boundaries like you did when you were in the police.
When we were young people.
Yeah. Who's doing that now, though? And he said Kendrick Lamar is
Yeah.
probably the guy that comes to mind.
Yeah.
You know? And you're breaking down his music. So what have you heard? What is he giving us that would be like what the Police did or like Bob Marley and the other people that pushed things? What do you hear from him?
Well, for me, the biggest thing from Kendrick specifically is that he's like his story from Compton and what he represents in terms of like kind of underspoken community, telling stories that you don't really get the privilege to hear about. And he's able to balance that. So it's one thing to do that and do that successfully, but it's another thing to do that while maintaining listenable, great music, right? Like very often you get one or the other. So there's like the conscious hip hop category where they make really kind of heady songs, but they're not the best songs. And then on the other side, you have people making like really good, catchy pop music, but the content's not always substantial. So Kendrick brings those two worlds together where he's telling you a very honest story. He's bringing about issues, multiple issues that we can go into, but and kind of and combining that with just like great songwriting. And so he represents to me personally a lot. And I think you're starting to see the appreciation for him as an artist, even outside of music, becoming more and more appreciated. Like, for instance, he just won a Pulitzer Prize. He was the first hip hop artist to win a Pulitzer Prize. Actually, the first musician that is not jazz or classical to win that award. So I think you're starting to see, to speak to like kind of what you're saying, the tides are turning. History was going to show that hip hop is a valid art form, and Dissect was in large part started with hip hop very specifically because I wanted to be a part of this movement of people that are like saying, no, hip hop's not just whatever people like your friend would think it is. It's much more than that, and it's actually probably the most truest form of folk art, I think, right now, folk music, which is essentially just speaking for the people. The people, and giving voices to people that don't often have them. So
that's absolutely true. And for one, as an art form, it has stood a test of perhaps a short time, but not really. I mean, if you think about the dawn of hip hop being the late 70s and what it was then, which was a bunch of neighborhood kids speaking their mind and having a party, and its evolution into being the voice and the archive of the experience of a wide chunk of America. I mean, starting with the urban experience in New York and then creeping across to really what was relatable about that urban experience in New York in all of the other locations across the country, to include, first of all, the African American pockets, the inner cities, and then the dirty South, and all throughout all the suburbs in the middle. And I think there's not a single black person in this room, and we're able to talk in great detail about our feelings for what this music has done to us over decades. Yeah. So I think what it started as and why it was so easy to catch on and why it's become so important as an art form is because, like you said, it has given voice to a segment of people, to Americana, who didn't previously have a voice, but it was so relatable in that it talked about struggle.
Yeah, exactly.
And that everybody, even if your struggle is not like Kendrick Lamar having come up in Compton and have his friends not all make it, and his
Yeah.
family members not all make it, and knowing loss in a whole different way than somebody with an idyllic suburban experience.
Yeah.
But there's still struggle, and there's still longing, and there's still aspiration in the music that we can all feel.
Yeah. And I think that's true. I talk about this all the time, like the universal experience that you get by studying something very specific. So like you can say this about any art form really, but specifically to music, it's like, okay, through Kendrick's story, yeah, it's going to specifically be about Compton, about gang violence, about the temptations of fame, none of which I've experienced personally, but you remove the specifics.
Look at all the bling on this guy.
Yeah. Excuse my gold chains here. Yeah, but if you remove the specifics of any story, you're going to find universal truths, and that's what art is meant to do.
Yeah.
So you're going to find that not only in hip hop, but you're going to find that in all genres of music and all art forms. And so I think it just takes the openness of mind to know that art in general is going to give you that. You just have to give what you want out of it. Like that's a large part of why I started Dissect, was like I wanted to see what happened when I gave myself completely to a work of art, which then literally changed my life. So it's like that was kind of a little experiment, and I gave many hours to Pimp a Butterfly to study it, but that album literally changed the way I saw the world.
Yeah.
So art will give you as much as you will give it.
When you were building the idea of the show, I mean, obviously it's way further from where you probably initially imagined it, you know. Kind of talk to us about that. Like before you had even pressed record the first time, what were you trying to build? Because you're trying to grab something. Like when we built our show, it was really basic themes. Like we know that life was a mosaic and we want to gather perspectives. So we didn't want to just have music. It was going to be life.
Yeah.
You know, things like
a lot
that.
of which happens to be music.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, we did have sort of an objective. And when you say your objective was to give yourself to the art form and see what you got back, that is a wonderful sentiment, and I applaud that sentiment. But you still have to think in terms of, I have to produce this consumable piece of something. Yeah. So I think that's where Pete's question is. What was you had to put a mission around it. What was that? What was that?
And where did you draw from? Like, you know, I mean, is it Dr. Bob, you know, because you can't just say, I'm going to have a show and I'm going to say the word tonic key all the time. You know, it's something more than that. So yeah, just give us a feel. Yeah.
I mean, I'll kind of bring it back to, because the interesting thing is Dissect represents for me personally, like, everything I've ever done creatively in my life, and it's kind of a combination of all these things. So I started playing music when I was 13, and I started with guitar, and I just wanted to be Jimi Hendrix essentially. So I self-taught guitar.
It started with Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So throughout my teenage years, I learned how to play guitar, and I played in crappy punk rock high school bands,
Sweet.
And then got more serious about the band thing as I graduated high school. Was in a few projects that, had some relative success, did some tours and stuff. But as soon as I actually, ironically, could have probably made a living in a particular band, I decided that it wasn't actually the life I wanted to live. Just like the lifestyle it came with, I wasn't really fond of ever. So
the gold chain was giving you too much back pain.
Well, sleeping on the people's floors and eating Taco Bell and
there's that.
And all that crap. So and also I felt like I was getting a little bit stagnant in terms of my just personal artistic growth. Like I just hit a wall in the restraints of a band. So that's why. So I dropped my bands and I went to college, and that's when I actually got a formal education in music. The funny thing about that is I didn't know how to read music before I went to college. I snuck my way into the music program.
And that was right here at Sac State.
Yeah, Sacramento State. And then so I'm taking college level music theory courses, and then on the side I'm trying to learn how to read music.
Wow.
And it was
Hornets, by the way. Does any music student give a damn about the Hornets?
No, not at all. Yeah, so that was an interesting experience, but I came out the other side pretty comfortable in my composition theory, and I learned how to compose for orchestra and all these things that I really fell in love with when I went to college. But after I went to college, I was kind of like, okay, what do I do now? Essentially, if I wanted to pursue music in the classical sense, I would have to get my doctorate, which I really considered doing, but I also had this 10 plus years background of playing popular music, playing in bands. So I was really interested in somehow bridging these two experiences together, because I feel like a lot of times they're separated, and even in like the collegiate setting, like popular music's not really validated as much as I think it should be. So, you know, I had that kind of brewing in my mind, and the first iteration of that was like a solo project where I tried to combine classical and electronic music essentially. But by that point in my life, I was kind of over playing live. I was over even anyone hearing my music. I didn't care at that point. So then I had a kid, which I don't know, do you guys have kids?
Yeah.
Yes,
Obviously changes everything. And time is way more valuable, and playing music at loud volumes whenever you want is also a thing of a past. So I had that. And
You
so
had a girl.
I had a girl, yeah.
Yeah, I have boys. They had no choice. This music is loud. Music is loud.
Well, it is now,
way,
actually, but not when, you know, they're an infant.
Okay, so we knew there was only a matter of
Yeah. So I started listening to a lot of podcasts, because you just like watch your kids sleep half the time.
Yeah.
So podcasts were just always going, and that's kind of when I very first started listening to podcasts.
What were you listening to then?
Well, Serial was like the first podcast,
Sure.
like anyone else, you know,
Gateway Serial.
which is
Gateway
on, like, fun fact, serialized music analysis comes exactly from Serial. So I had the podcast. My daughter was born the day after my daughter was born. To Pimp a Butterfly came out.
Wow.
And so I have this memory of literally sitting with my newborn child, listening to the album for the first time in headphones.
And a newborn album.
So I was like, and so I kept listening to that album. I was like, okay, this album is clearly trying to tell me something that I don't understand right now. And the only way that I'm going to fully appreciate this album is if I take the time to do so. And so I was listening to podcasts. You know, my college experience, how I learned to read music and how I got my fundamentals was not college. It was Dr. Greenberg's Great Courses series. And I loved the format, which was essentially 30 minutes to 45 minutes.
Wonderful, right? Yeah.
Of one, like essentially a lecture. And then over the course of the season or his class, you learn these overarching great things. So, you know, podcast, Greenberg, Baby, and Kendrick Lamar kind of all merged together, where it's like, okay,
Perfect storm.
why don't I do a podcast? Because I can easily publish that. Why don't I model it like Dr. Greenberg's classes that I loved, but then also why don't I apply it to contemporary music, which I also love, and why not start with To Pimp a Butterfly, which is, you know, telling me something that I don't understand. So all that kind of came together and just happened.
Here's what that says to me. You have a great sense of putting your ears to what the universe is trying to tell you, because I think a lot of us go through these life events, and when they all coincide like that, or whether they fall sequentially, not everybody's listening. I mean, it's great to hear that you had all of those things happen in a way that spoke to you at a particular time, and the timing for all of those things created the desire to make the Dissect podcast, which is great. And if I haven't said this already, if our listeners aren't already listening to it, they probably are. You should listen to it, especially you, Phil. So the ability to hear what the universe is trying to tell you is one thing. We also had hip-hop impresario Tim House on the show.
Do you know Tim House at all?
A couple of times. We asked him, well, one of the neat things that we did was we debated the
Mount Rushmore
of Bay Area hip-hop. And that was fun. But then we said, how about now? What's happening right now?
Yeah.
And he said, you know what's happening right now? To Pimp a Butterfly.
Yeah.
And he really set that aside as a remarkable work, as a game changer in the art form. And clearly it spoke to a lot of us all at once and was the real deal.
Yeah.
So to hear that coincided a day apart from the birth of your daughter, and then your ability to create and publish a podcast, because as a musician, you learn just inadvertently audio engineering.
Yeah.
And so you come to everything, and your inherent skills and all of your training, and even the training that you didn't know you were undergoing or necessarily undergoing on purpose, all met and converged right at the beginning. So did you have any idea how much doggone time it was going to take of your life to produce this thing? Because I know you spend hours.
Yeah.
Hours.
I mean,
on each one
line
of
by
those.
line, chord set by chord. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah.
You're doing. In case you didn't know.
Yeah. Right.
How many hours on average do you think you spent on an episode?
It's hard to say, but I guess 15 to 20 hours per episode.
Oh, yeah.
At least.
I can imagine easily.
Yeah.
That's just the prep. And then are you writing out like an outline that you go off of?
The scripts are like the most work. So each, I mean.
And you're a writer also, right?
Yeah.
I mean, somewhat.
Yeah. That's kind of all I did for, I don't know, 5 years of my life was studied. I really wanted to be a writer at one point, so I was like studying that for a while. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work. The scripts are definitely the most work. It's like each season, I think season 1 was like 350 pages and season 2 was about the same. So it's a lot of text to write.
And
It's
are
a
you
book.
doing
It's a book.
Yeah.
Are you doing all of that work up front and then now we're going to record, or do you do one, record one, do
No,
one?
so typically I'll start a season with like 6 episodes fully written and then recorded, and then I'll publish one, the first one, and then it's a weekly cadence, but I have 6 weeks buffer because it takes me longer than a week to produce the show.
Sure.
But I try to time it so that by the end of the season I am kind of producing the last couple episodes on the fly, because I like to hear from listeners and I can incorporate kind of some of their feedback, or, I always end the seasons with listeners actually calling in and 30-second audio clips of their experience of the album. So I kind of like that community thing at the end, but yeah, I try to work ahead, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to send you one of those clips, but it was either going to be 40 minutes long or it was going to be Cole. Fucking A. And that was it. So I decided that I couldn't really make
Yeah,
it.
30 seconds is hard, but it'd just go on way too long if it was any longer.
In all seriousness, though, I loved listening to people's 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's my favorite part of the season every time.
It was a lot of fun.
They're intelligent, thoughtful. They take it really seriously. I think if you're willing to listen to my podcast, you're pretty into music and you're pretty passionate about it. So I think I've kind of found a lot of similarities in a lot of the people that listen, because again, it's a very hyper specific subject and you have to be kind of really into music in general to listen to it.
I think into music in general is a good way to say it, but a more detailed way to say it is that you probably do the same dissection in your own head if you're a listener, and somebody finally spoke your mental language.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Yeah, that was my experience too, was as I was listening to this, I was like, when I hear these songs, I'm constantly digging for the sample and trying to figure out where the blend is and how on earth did you, and what is that thing in the background? That's got to be Gil Scott-Heron, or that's got to be, and as we do these things, finally somebody stepped forward and said, okay, first of all, let's talk about the progression, and let's talk about why this song works, and let's talk about why this series of chords, which, by the way, were taken from here, 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 and here, end up giving us a sense of resolution. And, man, I just remember going, okay, we're digging in now. I think that's probably the common experience.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say everyone loves music, and I'm kind of here to tell you why you love it, because it's not like people feel the things that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of here to explain it to you. But everyone feels music. That's why we love it. It's like there's something beyond the analysis, and the analysis is 100% secondary to the feeling of it. So people actually ask me all the time, like, oh, are you doing this constantly while you're just listening to music? It's like, not really. Like, I try to listen to music just like everyone else and just like get the just the visceral experience of it. And Dissect allows me to kind of not do that, which is also great. But like day to day, I'm just trying to like vibe with it, like everyone else.
When you are, and I get that because with our album fight, and though we do similar things, they're really different disciplines. But that listening is a different thing where there's like passive, I'm enjoying, I'm singing along. But then there's like, oh, is that this instrument? And oh, why did they make that choice? So when you're in that and you talk about 15 to 20 hours per episode, but we really know it's more than that because it's a lifetime of work to get to this point. You were pulling samples from far afield to get that. Where are you sourcing that, or is that just in your nugget? And you're
no, it's not. Okay. If I had to do that much work, it would take me forever. There's actually a great website if you guys don't know about it. It's called whosampled.com.
Okay.
And it's just you type in a song, and if it has a sample, more than likely it's going to tell you what it is.
But that opens a whole new field, too. Like, what is this thing? Oh, they slowed it down or whatever.
Yeah. And
now you got to spend however long. Like, when we do our album fights, like, next thing you know, I'm looking at Butch Vig, who produced the cover version of it, and I'm like, oh, man, I'm way over here, not even on the album anymore.
It's like the YouTube wormhole type experience.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's to find the source is one thing, but then to, like, try to think about why it was used, if it had a purpose, listen to the source song in its entirety and see if there's any themes that were being kind of built upon. Like Kanye especially does that, where he'll take an old song, he'll build on the theme that's already exists in the song and kind of personalize it or make it more contemporary or whatever the case is. But so I mean, it's more
guys. It.
Yeah. Again, sampling's essential. Like if you've ever tried to sample music before and make it work, you right away realize how hard it is. I've tried to do it and I suck at it.
Yeah, everybody who says, oh yeah, you just grab a sample and you throw down a rap on top of it is the person who has never, So the idea comes, you get to work on this thing. You're simultaneously running a household, raising a young daughter, producing the podcast. You have to earn a living.
Yeah.
All of these things are happening at the same time. If you're putting in that kind of time, what is your family? What's your family reaction to all of this stuff?
No, I mean my wife's really supportive, but I know that it used to. I get to do it as my job now, but in the early days, it was definitely tough.
Yeah,
because it was. Well, I mean, in the beginning, it wasn't as tough, but once the show kind of took off, and I kind of knew that if I kept doing it and did it right, like I could actually do something with this thing. So that's kind of when it got difficult, was when I realized that, and then I probably spent way more time than I should have on it. Not to say that I was absent at all. Like I'm 100% there for my daughter and my wife.
You just slept less.
But I just slept less. I would, I'd work into the wee hours of the night, and then I'd get up at 5:30 every morning to continue working on it. So it was,
which is an indicator of you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love doing it too, but once I kind of got the kernel of like, okay, this actually could be my life, like I just narrowed my focus and just like, I'm just going to make this thing happen. So that's when
You're making it happen, just so you know.
Yeah.
Tell us about the indicators.
Yeah.
When did you go, this is happening?
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner
or at JohnLG69
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
Yeah, I mean, so to be honest, like it's interesting because so people will actually ask me, I'll also get emails of people saying like, I want to do a podcast. How do I get started? Like, what do I do? How do I get exposure? And the first thing I always tell them is like, don't worry about anyone listening to your podcast at all, because chances are no one is or will not listen to it for a long time. Which is what happened.
I always say, no one gives a fuck about your podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it starts.
Everyone has a podcast.
No one cares.
Yeah.
Just make it because you love it. That's
exactly.
my advice all the time.
Yeah, and that's what Dissect was. Like I was finally at a place in my life where I didn't care. Like it was like the music project before that. I made it, put it out kind of, but like it was not for that. It was for me. I wanted to do it. Dissect was the same thing. The only reason I really formalized it was because like I knew the pressure of me just putting it into the world would make it better. Because the act of publishing it, for me at least, is like thinking that someone could hear it pushes me to make my best work. So that was kind of why I formalized it. But, when I put it out, I wasn't expecting much. And even all through most of season 1, I think I was at like 10,000 listeners by the end, which is really not that much, at least compared to what it is now. But I knew I had something when I started getting feedback from the listeners who were like very, very passionate about it. And like I just could sense that there was something there. Like I just knew like, okay, if I'm getting this feedback from the handful of people that are listening right now, I think this is going to work. And then season 2 happened, and I think the show got better. Kanye's a huge artist, and it just kind of, I guess just the time had passed to where I was starting to get little breaks. But yeah, I don't know. I just go back to that initial feeling of just like hearing from actual listeners and just sensing that something was clicking. Like I felt like
they got it.
Yeah. Like I was fulfilling a need that was not being fulfilled by anything else.
Yeah.
Like there's not a show like it.
Also, it went from that's nice, honey, thanks, mom, to here's what I really think about how you broke down these things, and like you said, somebody speaking passionately about having heard something on your show that they connected with, and then giving you back an analysis where you went, I've reached my people.
Yeah. I never thought in a million years people would actually want to listen to a 12-hour analysis of one album. Like I never thought. Like it's super nerdy. It's crazy nerdy.
It is crazy nerdy.
But I think, in podcasts, and I got lucky with the podcast thing. One, it was just it's like booming industry right now. But it really, podcasts, now I categorize it. There's like 2 general areas of podcasting that are successful. One is like the deep dive, and one is like the authentic personality. And the best shows and the most successful shows have either one of those, and the best ones have both of them. And so let's go into
the weeds about that. So deep dive show, your show is a deep dive show.
Yeah.
We're talking about 350 scripted pages of analysis based on scores and scores of hours of research going into a single album and helping us to pull that thing apart so that we can smell all the smells and see all the colors and really experience it in a different way. The other side, which is the personality side, describe that.
And that one I didn't know. Well, I didn't know either of these worked well on podcasts. Again, I'd listened to a few podcasts, but I wasn't like an expert on them at all. So I didn't realize these things. I just kind of got lucky with the deep dive thing, because a lot of podcasts are very deep dive, and that's kind of why people like them. But the authentic personality thing I discovered as season 1 went on, and definitely by season 2 I realized that so in the beginning of Dissect, I tried really, really, really hard to keep myself out of the show. I was very journalistic about it. I didn't say the word I. Like it was very, very third party kind of experience. But there were moments in season 1 that I started to interject a little bit more personality. On one episode at the very end, if you listen after the credits, I give a very personal story that relates to the song I dissected. And I would get the most feedback from people about those sections.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, as much as I want, and as much as my nature is to like be reserved and like stay in the background, the show would be better if I started to let more of my personality bleed into it. And I realize it's because podcasting is a very intimate experience. You're hearing this person for hours of your life. They're talking, it sounds like they're talking directly to you. And I've had experiences with podcasts where, I feel like I know the host by the end of the show. And so I realized that, and so I let a little more of myself into the show in with season 2. And even with season 2 finale, it was like literally I told my story of the podcast and how I got to take it full time and stuff. And again, the feedback on those sections of the show were always the strongest. So that's kind of where I learned that second aspect of it's the deep dive. But if you can give the deep dive with some authenticity and some personality, that's where I feel like podcasts are in the magic area.
I'm going to just take a sidebar with Kurt over here, and I'm going to say that, you know what it is? I think that we're onto the same recipe except that we have no idea what the fuck we're talking about, and we're assholes. So one of those two things is going to have to change. I don't know which one.
More asshole?
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
I love that you took that. When I found you through Quora. Someone said, hey, who does the Dissect podcast? And I like to answer questions. So I'm like, I'm going to go look into Dissect and see what it is. And I found you.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. And then I'm like, well, I'm just going to reach, because one of the things I do when I produce the show is I reach out to people, you know, and I think it was on Twitter. And I listened. And I didn't realize how Greenbergian we all are. But I mean, like you, I would sit in my rack in Iraq, and I would listen to these shows and be transported completely away, you know, and when I'm there, I'm dissecting the population. And so I need to turn my brain off and unplug. And so he would come take up all of my brain space and teach me about Mozart. And you know how it's... And if you guys aren't down with what Dr. Greenberg does, go to robertgreenbergmusic.com and buy any course.
You won't be disappointed.
Yeah, it's so good.
I thought you meant when we were all Greenbergian. I just imagined myself as in my natural form, which is that I am a opinionated Jew with a deep love for gin.
I thought you were just a big green pile of a mountain. You know?
Well, that too.
But that so when I saw that and I listened, the one, you know, as I help people do podcasts too, the one thing I was like, and I wouldn't presume to give you advice without you asking for anything, but I was like, man, I need more of you. Like, because you were hard to find. You wouldn't say your name. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, you're missing out, because that is part of it. Like, we want to know, we want to get to, one of the things about podcasting is you get to, Pete gets to be your friend, you know? Yeah. And the people that we have on that are notable, and I'm like, yeah, you come on once, that's great, but that's how you do radio. Yeah. In podcasting, come on 3, 4, 5, 6 times, so people are like, oh, that's Dexter from The Offspring. Yeah. I always buy his hot sauce, because fuck Tabasco, they're not talking to me. Yeah. Dexter is, and so I love that you've brought that piece in. But what's next? I mean, that's an evolution of where you're at, and we can get into season 3 in a little bit, but where do you see this going as the show flowers? Because you don't know where you're going next. A lot of times you're like, I feel like I need to do a little bit of this, and there's more things to do than you have time to do. Yeah. How do you sort through that? Is it having Kanye sit in on the finale or the penultimate episode, and you guys break it down? Because for sure, those guys, they're going to want to sit with you because of the respect you're giving their work, right? So what have you thought about? Where are you going to take this thing?
Yeah, I don't know. It's well, so I'll let you guys know. So Spotify, actually, that's where I am now. Okay. So Spotify, essentially, I'll be producing the show for them as a Spotify
companion piece,
original podcast.
Oh, congratulations!
That's great.
Yeah, so I was able to quit my job and do Dissect full time now, starting with season 3. So, you know, that in and of itself has been huge, because now, instead of doing this at night when my family's sleeping, I actually can just wake up and do it for 8 hours, 10 hours a day, and really, make the show better, produce them at a faster rate, get some sleep. Like, it's actually really interesting, like recording now in the daytime, which I never did before. Like, my voice is way different, and I'm like way more energetic, I think.
It's funny, those things you notice like that.
So that's definitely, and then also having the resources that Spotify has. Obviously, they have access to a lot of artists and producers and stuff. So it's been great having that team around me already in just these first couple of months. So season 3.
They find you? Or did you find them?
No, they found me. Yeah, there's by the time season 2 is over, there was definitely a lot of interest in the show.
Well, you were a #1 iTunes podcast at that point.
Yeah, in the music category, and then it peaked at like top 10 overall. So, it was pretty. Yeah, I mean,
that's fucking awesome.
Very crazy.
You can be humble over there. I'm like, Jesus. The funny thing about what Pete's connection with you was, and how he found you from the Quora post and all that, was that between the two of us, I'm the bigger hip hop fan. And when Pete said, "Hey, you ought to go listen to this Dissect podcast," it was almost like, you ought to go listen to this Dissect podcast. I'll call you in a couple weeks. Yeah. And then it was like, okay, I'll check it out. And I started listening to it, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to have to talk to you in a couple weeks.
But it was funny, because the way I remember this going down is I found it, and I was like, holy shit, this is excellent. And I told John, and we talk all the time, and it's like, yeah, no one's got time for that. And I'm like, listen, pay attention.
Yeah.
You specifically need this. And I think I had to bug you maybe 3
whatever.
times. Yeah. And then finally it was like, next time I asked him, he's like, yeah, I haven't slept for a couple days.
No,
I'm getting caught up.
Because the premise of the show is pretty ridiculous, and I think that you do. I have heard stories where it's like, yeah, you have to tell people a couple times to really give it a chance, even. But I think, obviously, the show's not it for everyone, but I think it's for more people than you might realize, given the premise of the show. Because what I've found is that people that don't even know or like Kendrick Lamar or Kanye West, especially Kanye West because he's so polarizing, still listen to the show, and even in the case of Kanye West, have come out the other side with a new appreciation for him and a more understanding of him as a person, and not, realizing that he's not just what you see on
That definitely
TV.
happened to me.
Yeah. And this is one of the things that makes great podcasts, and this is what I advise too, is like you have to focus on an emotion.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know what it is, like I want to make people happy or whatever that thing is, and you've created empathy for someone that a lot of us hate automatically, and that right there, you can always make money with that because it's so.
What do our fat asses do? Make people hungry?
Yeah.
Like you guys are always talking about burritos. That's true. That did happen for me. I did always appreciated Kanye as a producer. I mean, his skill level is tremendous. You can't ignore it.
Yeah.
But you don't have to like it. And even though I'll go so far as to say I would listen to some of your analysis and you'd talk about the lyrics, and you do a lot of speculating about what he's saying here and how he's referencing something back there, and he's probably pulling together these things. And sometimes I go, no, that's not what he's doing. But that's part of the fun of the show, is that you render an opinion about. You render a lot of fact and a little bit of opinion, maybe half and half. I don't know. But whatever it is, sometimes you'll say something about a lyric and I'll go, no, that's not it. And that's when I knew you had me, was when I started to push back in my head. I was like, what are you talking about? But it wasn't something where I would go, oh, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And then I'd go away from it. It was like, oh, no, I'm finishing this episode because I'm pretty sure he's not on the right track on this one. And by the time the end of the episode came, I'd be like, okay. And I'd have to take a rest because it's somewhat stimulating, somewhat exhausting.
Yeah.
That's good art.
Yeah,
that's what that is.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, some people will tell me they binge listen to both seasons in 3 days. I'm just like, how did you do that? One, how did you listen to my voice that long? But also all that information, it's exhausting.
It's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
One of the things that is a benefit, maybe you have or haven't realized this, but by doing this, you've become a definitive source for these 2 albums. And that's going to always be the case. Just like when we do our album fights, we're almost bound to reference that goofy Rolling Stones Greatest 500 album list because they wrote it.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can disagree with that thing. It doesn't,
but it's
still
already
source.
there.
Yeah. So you've got this ability to be, well, I would imagine the definitive breakdown of those albums. I mean, sure, someone in Rolling Stone wrote about it, someone in Village Voice reviewed it and all that kind of stuff, but you are like the standard. So if
John write 350 pages about it.
So when John disagrees, it don't matter because they've got to cite you, and that's a neat. That's always going to bring people to your show. Always.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting because what passes for music criticism, I've been thinking about this a lot, actually. I read articles all the time now where they don't even talk about the music. You'll read something about a new album or an artist, and it's all peripheral. Nothing is about the music, and I'm just like, this that's not music criticism. I feel like Dissect is what music criticism should be.
Yeah,
it's just really fucking hard. It's or it just takes too much time. So it's these people that have to pump out content on a daily basis can't dive this deep, but it's kind of a double-edged sword because you're not getting any meat, and I think that's why a lot of people do listen to Dissect, is because it's everything against that. It's all meat. Or at least I try to make it all meat, all as much as I can fact-based. At least it's definitely grounded in a lot of research. I have to give my opinion by nature sometimes, but I feel like when I do, it's at least justified by some research, So I don't know. I think that's why it's refreshing to a lot of people, and I think that's why podcasts in general are refreshing. It goes back to the deep dive thing. People are a little bit sick of this Twitter scroll feed of like surface level content, and they're looking for something that's actually like
For sure.
going to give them some benefit.
I can foresee your next big problem, and it's a good problem, not a bad one. But Sony, Capitol, these guys are all going to start showing up saying, "Hey, review this album. We want you to dissect it, right? And here's some money." And, of course, you're entitled to make money. You should. But they're going to push your – so we interviewed Allie Willis, who's written a zillion – she's a Hall of Fame songwriter. She wrote September for Earth, Wind & Fire and all kinds of great songs.
She's like the kooky lady next door.
Yeah.
White lady, too.
White lady, yeah.
And she wrote so many Earth, Wind & Fire
She's
songs.
so talented, right? Yeah. She's written all kinds of things. I mean, all kinds of things you would know. But once that happens – then you start getting asked, and then you're into the trap of the good problem of, I can't say no, because then they'll stop asking. Yeah. And so then it's like...
And then your challenge becomes, what do you say no to? Because you have to begin saying no.
Yeah. How do you produce more of these things?
But I want to say this, though, regarding your opinion. It's based in research. There's a ton of substance behind it that pushes your opinion. The thing that I think when you compare what you did to music criticism in general, to give the music critics a little bit of slack, is that a lot of times if you're the music critic at a insert publication here's your stack of stuff you have to review.
Exactly. Yeah.
You got to speak to a subject that you chose as being worthy of your opinion.
Yeah.
And so you have that going for you, and I hope that you continue to do that so that, number one, we can be guided as listeners to what albums, and I know you can't catch them all, but what albums do we know because we have something in common with somebody who's telling us from an expert point of view, this one matters.
Yeah.
You got to listen to this one. And to continue to dive deep so that we can go along for the ride, get the education. And I will say that in both seasons, there's a terrific education. And I am speaking from, as humbly as I can say this, in terms of my age, I'm probably more of an expert in hip-hop than most people.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say more than that. People are shocked by how much he knows about music in general. Yeah. And people are like, no, I'm not going to belong in the same room as you. So you're teaching the man a lot, and he knows a lot.
Yeah, but it comes from that place where you go, here's this piece of work that deserves my attention.
Yeah.
So, yes, that's all.
Well, I mean, I think, the thing that I've already realized with even like being able to do Dissect full time and having opportunities, the show will not work, and I'm like pretty passionate about this, if I don't care about what I'm dissecting. Mm-hmm. So there's no, it doesn't make sense for me to say yes to something that I'm not passionate about because it's not going to work.
Are you passionate about $50,000?
This is, my wife will tell you all about it. I don't think about money, and it's like to my detriment, but I've never have, and it doesn't influence me, I don't think, in the same way it does other people.
Sure.
And that's, again, to my detriment sometimes, but I just can't do it.
Yeah.
It's just not, I can't do it. This
is not wired for that.
It's at least 6 months of my entire life, dedicated to one thing.
For sure, yeah.
And it's that's a long time.
Yeah.
And if I don't care about it, if I'm just doing it for money, then it becomes just I'm going to a cubicle and doing that thing. It's not really much different than that. So, and the show's just not going to be successful because I'll just have to bullshit my way through it. And who wants to do that?
Yeah.
And who wants to listen to that? So I'm pretty secure in my ability to just keep it authentic.
That's fair. Yeah.
Amen, brother.
Yeah.
So I think what we should do as we round third base here is talk about what this upcoming season is about, and whatever you want to reveal about your long-term vision for how it's going to go down.
Sure. Yeah. So season 3 is going to be on Frank Ocean. Are you guys listening to his music?
Sure.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So the approach is a little different. It's weighted heavily.
That's Billy's brother.
He's Billy's
grandson, I think. Get into market. So what he's talking
what
about
I have
here
to live with.
Billy's got a car, and it's great. Convertible. He's got
convertible.
white pants on. Not the triple Cleveland because, he's a Caribbean guy. No, he's Caribbean.
Oh, he's Caribbean.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So there's something woven. All right.
Yes.
Footwear. Okay.
And likely a mango somewhere in the car.
I think Frank Ocean, though, probably had to be on the short list. So I'm relieved, elated to hear that he's the next pick.
Yeah, he is by far the most requested one, like by 2-1.
Wow.
Like him versus every other artist, like he still won. So to be honest, I listened to Frank Ocean, but I wasn't like, this is the guy that I have to do. But once I started getting all these, even from season 1, all of these people requesting him, I'm like, okay, there's something going on here that I'm probably not understanding. So then I dove into
the formula.
Exactly.
And did you find it?
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. They are 100% right. And that's actually been a cool experience because I love Kendrick and I love Kanye going into it. I didn't dislike Frank, but I didn't love him. But now I understand it, and I'm really, really, really big fan of him now. So that's been kind of a cool experience. And it's not hip-hop, so that's kind of fun. So, I mean, it's in kind of the similar spaces, but it's like he's not a rapper. And his voice is, beautiful. So, but I didn't realize his stories were so complex and detailed and really thoughtful, and just all these references that you just don't catch, or I didn't catch, at least, just surface listening. So, it's going to be heavily weighted towards Blonde, but it's also going to have like a mini series on Channel Orange.
Wow!
So it's going to be a little bit different of approach, but so
he made John turn around and look at me and not say anything.
No, because I've been battling with the overuse of the word "wow." We get a lot of people who make us say "wow," and sometimes Pete will. My exchange with Pete is this: Pete, you're overusing the word "incredible."
Well, you use the word "wow" too much.
And the thing is, when I edit shows, I hear it. I go, I use "wow" too much.
You edit your own stuff, right? And it's incredible, like, what you hear. You're like, I can't believe I had so many dicks in my mouth when I was talking. Like, why do I keep saying all these terrible things?
Yeah, but he scripts
a script
much more than we do.
But even then with that, though, it becomes like how I talk. That you scrutinize over that.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
Those pauses.
I pushed you out of the way, though, when you were talking about what's happening, and I had to look at Pete because I said the word "wow." I don't want to derail what you were saying. So, in your exploration of Frank Ocean, this is cool because we get a season and a miniseries, and so it's a bit of an aside. Which is, if you guys haven't already listened to Dissect, you do a lot of that in each episode because you'll go on little explorations as you go, and it's fun to tie all those things together. So you're tying an artist's pieces of work together because it's him. He's influencing him.
Yeah, it's cool about him is that he only has. I mean, he has 4 projects, but really the first one was a mixtape.
Yeah.
Endless is like a visual album, which is like kind of this half album thing. So the point is he has Channel Orange and he has Blonde, and it's like he's pretty early into his career, so it's kind of a cool at this point to compare and the incredible leap that he took from Channel Orange to Blonde and how he transformed his sound over those 4 years is going to be really fun to like compare and see like how he got there. And then there's that 4 years of just mystery that's kind of been fun to explore because he just literally disappeared.
Yeah.
And so like the whole experience around the release of Blonde was fun to dig into. But yeah, it's been cool. It's been really, really fun actually to dig in.
Can I tell you who's on my short list?
Sure.
And you can tell me. You don't have to say anything. My short list probably includes...
Season 4 will most likely not be hip-hop, just so you know.
Okay.
I'm going to diversify.
Well, that helps because the 2 hip-hop artists on my short list were Logic, G-Eazy.
Oh, see, I don't listen to much G-Eazy.
But I also think a lot about D'Angelo.
Yeah.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah. D'Angelo.
Which album?
I don't know. I like them all. I like Voodoo a lot.
Yeah.
And the thing that I like about Voodoo was each of his albums has been a reemergence, right?
Yeah.
Because he'll blow our minds, and while we're busy going, wow, what in the hell did you just do? He'll go, thank you very much, and disappear in the woods and do heroin for 9 years.
Oh, does it?
I don't,
Who knows?
And then he comes back out, and we go, okay, I wonder if he's got it in him. And he does it again.
Yeah.
I wish there was a work by Raphael Sadiq that would inspire a singular deep dive. I mean, he's got a wide career that I love, but he doesn't have the types of... Anyway, who else? Who else is on my short list, man?
I do want to say, if you guys want to interact with the Dissect podcast folks, to include Cole, you can get them at Dissect Podcast. You can always talk to them there, and that's of course you can get us, Pete A. Turner, John LG69 at Break It Down Show.
Any of those?
Yeah, any of those things for sure. Reach out and talk to us.
Yeah,
too.
Tell me who should be on my short list.
Yeah,
tell Cole what you think about his choices.
Season 3 was almost Tyler the Creator.
Oh yeah,
Flower Boy. You guys like that album?
I don't know that album.
Yeah, that's really why I wanted to do it, because I don't think it came out last year, and I think people overlooked it. So listen to Flower Boy.
Okay.
Very good album. Really good.
Well,
album.
when Cole Cuchna tells you to listen to something, you should ought to listen to it.
Yeah.
And I will say thanks, man, on behalf of our listeners who are your listeners and our listeners who are going to become your listeners. We appreciate how deep you dive. We appreciate your insight into this music that has become a fabric of American society and our generation. And we appreciate that you make the depth of the creation of this music so much more accessible to, I think, the music intellectual out there.
Yeah, thanks, man, for doing what you do. It's great to have. I don't listen to many podcasts. As you know, it takes up a lot of our time.
Yeah, definitely.
And so what I turn on and put into my head either is there to distract or, in your case, inform. We're the progeny of Dr. Bob Greenberg's idea, and I love that we really are like sibling shows in how we do things. I would love, and it's okay to say no if you're busy, but I would love to have you do an album fight with us. Not nearly as much work, maybe 2 hours or so. But and if you don't have them, I understand because you got a young kid and a wife. But I think you'd get a kick out of a different style of doing this. And I always want you to. So if you want to do a YouTube album, I'll listen to it probably 25 times.
You need to do the one with Greenberg too. I need to meet him.
Oh yeah, seriously. Let me know, and then can you get to Oakland?
Yeah.
All right, great, done. All we got to do is pick a date, and we'll do it.
Yeah,
because he's fantastic.
And his house is worth the trip.
Is it?
Yeah.
So it'll be a lot of
We took Kurt, and he was sad when we didn't take. We were there the other day, and Kurt was like, "Oh man."
What we had to get out of there the other day, and the last time we took Kurt, we were snockered when we left there.
Never mind all that.
Anyway, Cole Cuchna, everybody. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, thank you guys.